the frontier technology-powered world, how are we going to protect our data, even our minds, and all of our assets? So the next panel really is helping us figure that out. Protecting your identity, privacy, and data in an AI-powered world. Now, the person leading this is Ariel Wolleneau, who's the Managing Director of FinServe Experts. He's an expert on and been advising governments, central banks, on things like fintech, AI, DLT. He was hired by Google last year to develop the AI risk training for their own go-to-market team. He's got a patent on self-sovereign secure information management. Nobody better qualified. He's now working on a plan for Dubai's new AI regulator to figure out a safe AI usage policy for government employees of Dubai. But a fun fact, in his 20s, he used to split his time between being a CPA, an accountant, and a radio DJ. Please welcome Ariel Wolleneau to the stage. We should have music.
Hello, everyone. We will crack right on because we only have 20 minutes. Emmanuel, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. It's pretty fast, but yeah. So Emmanuel, nice to meet you all. So I used to be an academic in AI. I was teaching, doing research at UCL, and then at some point I just quit. And I decided to build my own company. So now I'm the CTO and co-founder of Scribe. So at Scribe, just very briefly, our core expertise is financial insights. So we are dealing with public information, private information. We are using all the buzzwords, so computer vision, natural language understanding, natural language generation, and we're writing about these companies. And so, yeah, more relevant to this discussion, we are dealing with private information coming from our clients about their own clients, and we're writing, generating insight about that.
Marta?
Marta Piekarska-Gieder. Currently, I serve as a CEO of a company called Filecoin Incentive Design Labs, so dealing with decentralized storage. But my background, my PhD is in computer science and security and privacy. I was there when ID 2020 was created, which is the UN movement to provide digital identity by 2020. Didn't happen. Yeah, and I've been in Web3 blockchain space since the very first day of my work, which was 16 years ago.
So my name is Ussal Shahbaz. I have a consultancy company that's doing government affairs and soft landing for technology companies in Turkey and now in Central Asia. So we work with these companies to communicate the ideas on new technologies like AI, blockchain, health tech to the governments and work with them to develop new policies.
Great, thanks very much. When you think about the theme of protecting your data, there's often held to be, and I'm not sure this is true, it could be true, could not be true, but there's held to be a trade-off between good governance and privacy and the ability to use AI for effective business development. So the more private it is, the harder it is to use the data. Emmanuel, how do you advise your clients on how to strike that balance?
So I'm going to talk about the way we are dealing with their own private data. And the easy answer is just train your own models and just host your own models. But in practice, it's not that easy. So the way we're doing it, because we're dealing with private information, but which are financial private information about their own clients. So a bank, for instance, the financial information about the companies they are lending money to, or investors about their own companies, etc. All of that. And so the way we do it is, I mean, there are multiple ways of doing it, but the main way we're doing it is really to cut the task into multiple different steps and allocate the right model, the right method to the right step. So for instance, if you have a big table of financials, you don't want to feed all of that to an LLM, especially if it's OpenAI, because you know that it's going to train the model on your own private data. And so what you can do is just, for instance, give to OpenAI just the headers of that table and ask it to lay down all the transformation steps. And then you apply these steps using your own model that is way smaller, but most of the reasoning has been done on anonymous data, essentially.
Marta, anything you want to add?
Yeah, I think that also raising user awareness of the fact that their data may be used for training, and introducing policies around being able to opt out the way that we can opt out from other things. And there are methods of watermarking your data and marking it as not to be used by training sets.
Hassan?
I think, and I'll talk more about the disinformation part in my turn. The paradigm change that we are having with AI is actually, what I'm seeing is that we are producing some patch solutions to a very big problem that AI is creating, and the institutions are not adapting to the change. So most of these things that I see as technology-based solutions, now I think at the stage of patchworks to a much larger problem that we have.
So thinking a second about the larger problem, a large language model is at its heart simply a probability distribution. It is not thinking, it doesn't understand the concepts. All it is doing, and it is literally doing this one word at a time, is figuring out, given the prompt, what is the most likely next word? And then the next word, and do I put a period at the end of the sentence, or do I keep going to a new sentence? That's all a large language model actually knows how to do. And because that's all knows how to do, it always has the potential to be epically wrong. ChatGPT 3.5 famously once was asked, what are the, which countries start with the letter V? And it said with confidence that there are no countries that start with the letter V. Apologies in the audience to anybody from Vanuatu or the Vatican. But there's a bigger risk, which is not just that AI can inadvertently give you wrong information, but that can actually be leveraged to actively disinform or to purposefully, intentionally spread disinformation. Usa, what do you see going on in that space?
I think there are two things that's going on. One is, as you said, AI is used to produce a lot of disinformation, to amplify the impact of disinformation, because you can produce a lot of text which are of very high quality, sometimes better than, and we tested this in Turkey, sometimes better than the ones that are authored by human beings in terms of disinformation, because those are very low-cost things, right? And very low-quality workers are doing that. And you can always test which is going better. You can always do A and B tests and use the better performing text for the disinformation purposes. The other problem, I believe, is the following. The more you generate text with these large language models, the less valuable becomes the human-generated text, and the real media, which is responsible for producing, high-quality content, etc., loses its, revenue model. And that's a very big problem. It started to lose with all these Google search and SEOs, and now there's another stage, which is a paradigm change, as I said, with the LLMs. If everything is started to be produced by LLMs, right? Who will write the original texts that will be used to train those LLMs? And also, who will write the correct material? That's a big question, and for that you need, budgets. You need a sustainable business model, and we are losing that business model. I think the solutions that I see in the market to do that, either technology solutions or the regulatory solutions, like France is doing, Australia is doing, pay to these, copyright to the news producers. They are kind of patchwork. They are not really solving the real problem.
Yeah, so I don't know how many of you are aware of it, but NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, which certifies solutions for the U.S. government to use, last month announced a program called ARIA. Hands up, any of you who've heard of ARIA? Anybody? A few. ARIA basically is in traditional U.S. tradition, voluntary program by which owners of LLMs can submit them to do lab tests for reliability. And in fact, one of the studies that ARIA is on, it's not in the first release, but is on ARIA's roadmap, is to look at potential degradation from multi-generational LLM usage. So that is something that that is very much in the minds of at least policymakers in the US and presumably elsewhere. Emmanuel and Marta, anything to add on this?
Well, two things. I really agree with you. Something that I observed actually recently is that GPT-4o nowadays will give you citations, right? So it gives you a little citation, quotation mark, and you can click on it, and it gives you this comfort that, like, yes, there's a source for this information. So in my spare time, I sometimes organize wine tastings, and I asked ChatGPT to give me ideas for wine that is not champagne, but sparkling wine for a wine tasting. And it very confidently gave me a bunch of things with prices, because I asked for prices for the bottles. And I clicked through one of those, because I was quite surprised with the answers it gave me. It wasn't wrong, but I was quite surprised. I clicked through it, and none of the websites that it theoretically used had any of the information that it was telling me about, which is like, I understand all of it is very hard, but it gives you that continuous false sense of security. And like, you know, when I was at school, we had to quote the direct research. My kids were able to use sources like Wikipedia. Teachers would kind of accept it, but these days, we are using the third or fourth generation of reinterpretation of information by using LLMs, which means that we are not producing any more knowledge, we are just requoting falsely quoted things.
Yeah, in addition to that, I fully agree with both of you, obviously. But so with more and more synthetic data being created and fewer like manually written blog posts and stuff like that, we'll end up with some sort of inbreeding of the LLMs, and we'll plateau in the performance eventually. So in addition, I mean, I know it's protecting your identity, privacy, and data, but I think eventually what we'll have to also protect is their own skill set that we'll have to encode one way or another in order to perhaps, maybe it's a bit far-fetched, but perhaps train our own model that will be our personal one, that we'll put on the job market one way or another, that will work for us, and will be the only one having access to that kind of skill set, because that will be the only way to go above that ceiling that will be there because of the inbreeding.
So when I think about managing, the risks that you're highlighting, typically being, an old-hand professional and far too old for my own good, I think about risk management frameworks. I mean, again, NIST published one for AI last year. It's not, it's a 1.0, but it's not bad. But there's something that is different about managing AI risk than managing any other kind of risk we've seen before. So typically, the way you do risk discovery is you articulate what are the real risks from using your product or developing your product, risks to people's data, privacy, accuracy, so on and so forth. AI is unique because you're not only managing real risk, you're managing perceived risk. Risk, you have to manage risk that your product doesn't have. Great example, self-driving cars, okay? The data is early, but it looks like self-driving cars are, have the potential to be about 10 times safer. So the accident rate is about 10% what human-driven cars are. Unfortunately, drunk driver gets in a car and kills somebody isn't news. Automated Tesla car kills somebody is news. So despite the fact that you're actually marketing a safer product, there's a perceived risk that you need to manage as well as the real risk. And that's, at least as far as we could tell, unique to AI. In working with your respective customers, how do you go about, and what advice can you give the audience to manage not just the real risk, which I assume being professionals you already know how to do, but the perceived risk? Marta?
I think first you have to kind of understand the use case. And like if you're trying to convince your clients to use AI, then it's likely a lost battle in some ways because people have to be bought into it. It's like back in the day with blockchain, like unless the company was really bought into the concept, selling them blockchain was a failed task. And then just addressing it with understanding and like systematic approach of like this is certain getting, once you understand their fears, you can address them.
Okay.
So in my case, the counterpart is generally the government agencies, right? And there are different, I think, levels of government agencies in the world. Some of them, like those in the UAE, are very progressive in terms of their regulations, in Singapore, etc. These are very compact, small city-states where they can try things. Some of them are the regulators of the countries where these technologies are developed, like those in the US. They have a different approach. They are also very much, the vested interests of these technology developers are, influencing these regulators. The ones in the middle, let's say in the emerging markets, are generally the takers of these regulations. They always look to the West and, adopt the regulations. I think, when educating these regulators, what you need to do is always repeat, gain more stakeholders, convince more stakeholders, and repeat the ideas which should be based on facts, so that, over the time, they will understand. But it won't be fast. The institutional adoption rate is much slower than the technology adoption rate.
Okay. We're coming up at the end of the time, so I want to give each of you the chance. So if you were wearing a badge on your chest that said, "Ask me about ... so that people can come up and talk to you after the presentation, what would it say? Ask me about...
So ask me about the challenges of how to explain these technologies to the policymakers in different settings.
Okay. Marta, ask me about...
How AI can be used for good stuff.
Ask me about how to empower people with AI instead of replacing them.
Very good. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great conversation.
Thank you. Ariel.